Welcome. You've logged in again to this familiar game called life. You know the terrain, you recognize the moves, and yet here you are, wondering if this time the outcome might be different. Most of us live on autopilot, cycling through experiences that feel scripted but rarely questioned. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt describes the mind as a rider and elephant. The conscious self tries to steer, but the powerful automatic self often runs the show. Addiction is when the automatic habit takes over. Today we'll explore addiction not as a moral failure, but as a complex, learned survival strategy shaped by biology, trauma, culture, and identity. We'll unpack its origin, understand the forces that kept us looping, and consider ways to rewrite the code for a different ending. At its core, addiction is a story of human suffering, but also of resilience. It is a maladaptive attempt to solve a deeper problem: how to manage pain, discomfort, and disconnect. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." Addiction can be seen as a way to avoid that dizziness, to numb the uncertainty and chaos inherent in human freedom and existence. Gabor Maté, in The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, argues addiction is a response to profound childhood wounds and unmet need. It is a desperate pursuit of relief from psychic pain and feeling unseen. Addiction often masquerades as relief, but it is actually grief. Grief from what we never had, and grief for the part of ourselves we hide. This loop, where disconnect leads to distraction, which triggers dopamine release, which reinforces disconnection, is the cycle many experience. Anna Lembke's Dopamine Nation highlights how our environment floods us with dopamine-inducing stimuli: drugs, screens, food, making addiction a natural outcome in a dopamine-rich world. Addiction's roots are complex, involving multiple layers. In terms of brain chemistry and survival, our brain prioritizes survival, not happiness. Dopamine motivates behavior, reinforces survival strategy. Addiction hijacks the system, creating compulsions that are hard to break. Nora Volkow, director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, explains that addiction rewires brain circuits for judgment and memory, impairing control. In terms of trauma and emotional disconnection, the ACE study reveals a strong link between childhood trauma and later addiction. Trauma disrupts emotional regulation and attachment system. Bessel Cook's The Body Keeps Score explores how trauma is stored in the body, how it influences behavior and health. Addiction serves as a coping mechanism for this somatic pain. Now, in terms of societal and environmental influences, we live in a culture that commodifies relief. Capitalism markets quick fixes, pills, apps, entertainment, all designed to deliver dopamine hits. Bruce Alexander's theory of dislocation describes how loss of meaningful social bonds creates vulnerability to addiction. The Rat Park studies show how addiction lessens with enriched social environment. Lastly, in terms of identity and meaning, the most insidious cause may be confusing coping strategies with identity. The psychologist Stephen Hayes, founder of ACT, emphasizes the importance of psychological flexibility and the understanding of self as separate from learned behaviors. Carl Jung's insight that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate is important, because addiction is often unconscious coping disguised as identity. Now let's explore what can be done. There is no single fix. Effective recovery combines several approaches. One of it could be naming it. The first step is awareness. To name the feeling or impulse is to tame it. Neuroscience shows that putting emotions into words activates the brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for reasoning and impulse control, helping to regulate the limbic system's emotional flood. John Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer of mindful-based stress reduction therapy, teaches that naming emotions and cravings without judgment creates space between impulse and action. This moment of awareness interrupts the automatic loop of addiction, giving you a choice. This practice transforms "I am overwhelmed" to "or I need a fix" into "I am noticing anxiety" or "I'm observing a craving," shifting from reaction to reflection. Another thing could be focusing on progress over perfection. Recovery is not about sudden total transformation, it's about gradual shift. Neuroscience reminds us of the brain's plasticity, the ability to rewire and adapt, but only with consistent small efforts. Choosing progress over perfection means celebrating every small change, choosing honesty for one conversation, choosing presence for 5 more minutes, choosing to pause between instead of escapes. This mindset helps counter the all or none thinking that is common in addiction, where relapse feels like a total failure. Instead, every imperfect step forward strengthens new neural paths. And lastly, connections. Addiction thrives in isolation. Brené Brown's research shows that vulnerability and connections are the antidotes to shame, the silent fuels of addiction behavior. Speaking truth to someone who you feel safe with, whether it is a trusted friend, therapist, or even through journaling, breaks the silence that shame depends on. This connection fosters empathy, reduces shame, and builds a social safety net. Furthermore, Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory highlights how social engagement regulates the nervous system, enabling individuals to feel safe enough to heal and resist compulsions. Recovery is ultimately about reclaiming connections to self, others, and as well as meaning, because addiction is at its heart a symptom of disconnection. David Foster Wallace described the default setting as the tendency to view ourselves as the center of the universe, ignoring others' struggle. This mindset deepens isolation and fuels addiction. Addiction's real boss fight is disconnection from self, from others, and from meaning. Recovery requires courage to choose connection over numbing, vulnerability over shame, and presence over escape. Change is slow and incremental. Neuroplasticity offers hope. Every small step rewrites the brain script. Healing is reconnection with the authentic self behind survival mask. As Brené Brown says, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. There is no final boss, only choices, where the old loop calls pause, notice, name the feeling, break the cycle. Remember, coping is not weakness, but your brain's attempt to speedrun to safety. But safety is not the end game, connection is.